This is The Roadmap with Ted Jenkins.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Roadmap exclusively here on ASBN.com. I am your host, Ted Jenkins, and every week we bring you some of the brightest, the best CEOs and entrepreneurs and business owners all over the country. A lot of you are asking me, how do I scale my business? How do I climb the ladder? How one day do I get that exit stage left where I can get huge multiples on my business? So I hope to bring you great guests every single week. And this week I've got Ernest Ellis. He's the CEO and founder of FS360, a very, very successful company. He's been successful in multiple companies. What I want to know to start this thing is that 2008, what a year. Stock market crashes. Shortly after that, we had maybe one of the biggest real estate crashes of all time. And around that time, you started a general contracting company.
Sure did, yeah.
How did you even get into that?
Temporary loss of insanity. So, but
It sounds like a business owner's comment all the time.
Exactly. There's an old adage. Crisis means danger, but it also means opportunity.
I love that.
In 2008, I think everyone was trying to figure out, what's next. I mean, how do we, take advantage of, what is going to be born out of this carnage? And so, we basically looked at, ourselves and looked at our Rolodex and looked at the relationships and the connections that we had in the city. And we found that construction management, general contracting did provide an opportunity for us to get out into the market and be successful.
Was that esoteric to Atlanta that you thought it was Atlanta that was going to grow, or were you doing this all around the country?
We're an Atlanta-based firm. We do have an office in Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Oh, great area, yeah.
That area did not really have a recession in 2008, 9, and 10.
Right?
It really did continue to move and motor forward. But we were focused on the Atlanta market, and which was very tough at that time because there really wasn't what we like to call a crane in the sky. There wasn't anything being built, over 1 or 2 stories. But at the end of the day, we were able to get into every door because everyone was trying to figure out the path forward. Owners, developers, contractors, and even as a startup, we didn't have any door closed to us. We were able to build connections and relationships even in that very bad time.
I've often wondered, is that the measure of how fast a city is growing, the number of cranes in the sky? Is that a good way to tell predictively if a city's growing?
There's actually a metric,
Is that right?
Yeah, it's actually a metric where construction-related firms measure how many cranes are in the sky to determine how much is being built and what the activity is in the city. So yes, cranes flying equals opportunity.
So did you know nothing about the general contracting business? Did you have to get specific licenses to get into this business, or did you have some background based upon a prior business?
I did not have a prior background in construction.
Wow.
I came out of the telecommunications industry, and when my partners and I came together, we actually were focused on another business model. And one of the requirements of an entrepreneur is sometimes you have to pivot. And the business model that we initially rolled out with, quite frankly, it didn't fit our DNA. It didn't fit our long-term strategy. So, we pivoted to the construction management, general contracting, field, and over time we were just able to build relationships and the capabilities to be successful.
So like if you're giving advice to a business owner when you generally don't know an industry that well, because some people say I want to own a restaurant or I want to start a consulting company, how did you know how to price out your services or where to fit that to start, or did you just start at a level and say, I think this is kind of the eye test of where it needs to be?
You have to have those people who are strong where you're weak. And so my background is primarily sales and marketing and even operations in multiple startups in the telecommunications industry. I got very good training, at IBM and Verizon and MCI over the years. So I leaned on that for the macro level, the strategic and the planning efforts that go into building a business. But those subject matter experts are the ones that are critical for firms like ours or any company where the founders don't really understand or don't have the level of detail or depth of knowledge to make sure it's priced right and how to execute and how to deliver. So we were very fortunate to be able to bring in at a very early stage, some really strong people that knew how to build.
As you were taking on more contracts and growing the business, what are some of the key things you had to do to think about scaling the business? Because I can only imagine that you start out with 1 or 2 projects and before you know it, you could have 10 or 20 projects. What do you have to think about in this kind of business when you scale it?
Well, so construction, general contracting is a labor-intensive, subject matter expert
Right.
required industry, and the margins aren't the greatest with regards to
So
comparing to telecom.
it's a volume game.
It's a volume. So it's either a lifestyle business or a scaled business. One of the two. The danger is in the middle, and so we have always been very conscious of making sure that we don't overspend on overhead,
right?
Committed costs, making sure that we're focused in the field, so that we're delivering on time, on budget, with the highest quality, safely. As we scale, we're always trying to be conscious of, are we delivering the margins that we need to deliver? And so in order to be in this business and grow, you have to have really good partners, both at the banking, financial level, as well as the insurance and sureties level. I mean, you cannot grow your company unless you have those partners in place.
How do you prepare for something like the pandemic? I can imagine, because I know construction, I think, was considered essential employees during the pandemic, but all of a sudden you realize, hey, we have all these projects that are going on here, and we've also got to keep our workers safe. How do you manage through that chaos? I can only manage the chaos if you've got hundreds or thousands of employees working on projects and trying to keep people safe, but also still try to get the projects done.
It was tough for the industry. It was really, really difficult, especially early on, because we didn't know what the game plan was going to be. And even when they identified us as an essential industry, early on, the entire industry was trying to figure it out.
You don't have any idea.
Had no idea, but we all had to figure it out very quickly. For us, I mean, we've always had a hybrid operation, where we've had people in the field more so than in the office. And that worked out very well for us because it didn't change our operations model at all.
Right.
We were already operating that way. Again, we don't want to throw money into overhead.
Right.
We want to put the money into the field and to our people. So it was not so much of a detriment for us in that regard. But where it really impacted everyone was contracts being paused, projects being canceled. So we had to work really hard and diligently to backfill and make sure that we had enough revenue, projects, clients to keep the engine going. So
I feel like every time I turned a corner the last couple of years here in Atlanta, there was a piece of land that now has building on it. There's a piece of dirt in the city, and now there's a high rise that's going up. And that made me think about labor and that there aren't an unlimited number of construction workers that are out there. And so how do you compete for talent when you try to find people to do these jobs? Because there are a lot of kids that go to school today and they don't get taught about blue collar jobs and they just want to go to college. And not that that's a bad thing, but there's a lot of money to be made in construction and they're great jobs. How do you find the talent and how do you keep the talent over time?
It's probably the most difficult issue to overcome for everyone in the business, but for small firms, 30, 40 employees, which is where we kind of fit, it's double tough for us. We have been focused on referrals and trying to ensure that we have stronger relationships with actually historically black colleges.
Yes, well, HBCUs are huge here in Atlanta.
Not only in Atlanta, the Southeast, puts out a ton of really, really good candidates at North Carolina A&T, Tuskegee, Florida A&M, Albany State, Fort Valley State. I mean, there's just a number of HBCUs in this region that puts out awesome candidates. And we just recently brought on 2 Tuskegee grads over the last 6 months, and we'll continue to mine that area. And for us, we're focused on bringing in entry-level talent and grow them up in the business and do our best to keep them for as long as we can. That works really well with the size and scope of the projects that we have. And it works really well for us to onboard minority construction professionals that want to grow into the business because they need an avenue to get into this business and be successful.
But labor is the biggest roadblock in this thing, trying to find good labor and keep that labor over time. I'm wondering on the other side of this, I noticed I was driving by a school that was being built a few weeks ago, and I remember when I was up in New York City, every time I'd see a build, there was scaffolding, but I saw these things called mass climbers now. They look like these hydraulic machines that just push people up and they fix the stuff and they bring them down. Has technology changed a lot of the construction industry?
So technology in construction is emerging, versus my experiences in telecommunications. Which
is all forward thinking.
Which is all forward thinking. I mean, the technology that I understood in the telecom industry is mothballed. And I truly don't understand the technology and how the internet has impacted telephony today. So it's a completely different world from when I was in it.
Right.
And it wasn't that long ago. Construction has always been a late adopter to technology, in my opinion. There's some things that I think the industry should embrace, like Six Sigma and ISO certification, because there's so many connections in this business, so many vendors, so many subcontractors, so many people that touch a project. There's just a ton of defects. So Six Sigma and quality management, those are some of the things that this industry has not embraced. But having said that, over the last 15 years we've been in the business, we've seen a tremendous uptick in technology and solutions and tools, and we look forward to it continuing.
Is this a hard business to sell? I mean, and I only say that because does it rely, like obviously the last 15 years interest rates have generally been low. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of construction. Does it rely on the economy to sell this business, or does it rely on the relationships and the contracts that you build?
This is a relationship-centric industry.
It is.
And so in comparison to my experience in the telecom industry and even in the software development space, which I was involved in for a couple of years, M&A activity in construction is non-existent compared to those industries. Typically, you'll see firms become legacy firms. So you build a firm, your son or daughter will come in and run it. You grow it to a certain size. You'll do an ESOP and sell it to the employees.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion and experience, the M&A activity is on the larger end, where a DPR construction will come in and buy a Hardin. That was a big deal.
Right.
Where a J.E. Dunn will come in and buy an R.J. Griffin, another big deal. But to see an acquisition of 10, 15, $20 million firms, there is activity, but not at the level of other industries.
Telecom.
Not like telecom, not like software, not like with medical devices, where you can build a business and sell it in 12 months. Again, a lot of it has to do with the relationships. I mean, if you look at some of the larger firms, the owner's name is on the building. Right. When you take that owner out of the loop, you take the relationships off the table.
Right.
So
that's a real problem.
That's a real issue.
It's hard to transition the business.
It's a hard issue to overcome, but hopefully those dynamics will change over the next generation.
How do you think about the idea of partners? Sometimes I always hear that thing, the only ships that sink are partnerships. And, I guess that can be somewhat true, although sometimes they'd be successful. Do you think more about building a board over time to help with the company? Is it good to take on partners? A lot of business owners struggle with that, that kind of conversation.
I've been fortunate to have a couple of really awesome partners from the very beginning. And they're still with me today. And
wow.
That's
a long time.
That's a long time. We're going into our 15th year. And I was counseling my nephew yesterday, who's got a startup catering company in Chattanooga, who's doing really well, that you can't grow it alone. I mean, you find yourself drinking your own bathwater, as I say. At some point you need somebody to tell you that that's bathwater and it's not healthy. So at some point you need some mechanism to ensure that you're doing the right things at the right time with the right people. And so whether it's a partner or a board or a coach or some mechanism like traction or scaling up, I just think that you have to get outside yourself to really maximize your potential.
And what do you do, day to day? I always think about this. It's so hard when you're an entrepreneur. I don't even call it work-life balance anymore. I call it work-life juggle. What do you do to try to break away from the business? Because I know all entrepreneurs, people always want to know, well, do I get weekends off? It's like, well, you don't get nights or weekends or nothing. It's 24/7 all the time. How do you try to get away from the business so you can recharge yourself and continue to be a great leader for the company?
Well, my wife would tell you that I don't do it very well, but I do.
Mine too.
I do my best. I truly do try to delve in and stay connected to my family and make sure that I'm present as best I can, at all times, and not just with my wife and my sons, but with my sisters and my brother, and we try to vacation together and just try to unplug in that regard, and also try to give back, to the community in whatever way that I can. And so I'm involved. I'm as president of the National Association of Minority Contractors, and that doesn't sound like unplugging, but I really am embrace the mission of what we're trying to do.
Something different than the day-to-day.
Exactly, and it's helping people. It's helping minority contractors as well as prime contractors get connected and create commerce and create opportunity. So I enjoy what we do as a company, and if I can do whatever I can to ensure that other companies have the same opportunities and are successful, then that's very meaningful to me. But I truly do try to plug into my family.
Our city here in Atlanta, a great city, but one statistic came out at me recently that just blew me away, called upward mobility. And we were at 4.5%, Ernest. We were the last in the United States. And we probably have, if we're not the largest Black population as a city behind DC, we got to be pretty close.
Right.
What do we need to do better as a city? Because the minority entrepreneurs in our city, the ones that are sitting on the couch now, can't get financing, need more education, could explode this city to help double it or triple it over time. What do we need to do better that we're not doing today?
Well, I think there are a ton of foundational efforts underway right now that you're going to start to see explode. For instance, the Russell Innovation Center for Jay Bailey, the Russell family, that ecosystem down there. I truly believe that you're going to see that as a national operation if they want to do so over the next few years. And that is an example of what it will take to get Black firms empowered and with the capabilities and the development to be successful. Specific to the construction industry, the statistic that jumps out at me is that, for every 4 people that are leaving the industry, 1 is coming in. And then you marry that up with the fact that only 6% of the workers in the industry are African American, and less than 15%, 6%, and less than 15%, I think it's actually 12 or 13%, are women. The opportunities and the upside there are huge. And then you put that with the fact that if you enter the business as an untrained laborer making $18 to $20 an hour at 18 years old, by the time you're 23 to 25, you're making middle class wages of $65,000 to $75,000. You'll be trained with no college debt. You're in the middle class before you're 25.
Why aren't we teaching that in the high schools? We really need to be doing it.
NAMAC is trying we're doing those kind of things, and there's some other organizations to do that. I mean, I believe that we swung the pendulum a little bit too far away from the trades.
Right.
And now organizations like National Association of Minority Contractors, Associated General Contractors, Associated Builders and Contractors, we're trying to make sure that everyone understands this is a viable path and try to ensure that we get as many people into the trades as possible.
I love not only what you're doing on the for-profit side, but I love what you're doing on the nonprofit side. We need it here. Like I said, we had a great city, but I know it can double or triple in size and build wealth in our city for many, many people. So thanks for coming on the program today. How can people learn more about your firm if they need to have a general contractor?
Sure. I mean, the best source is our website, www.fs360.com, and also on our LinkedIn. We would love to have the opportunity to speak to anybody that needs something built. We build for excellence and build for relationships.
So we learned here today, guess what? Crisis could be a good thing or a bad thing. It just depends on whether you think the glass is half full or you think the glass is half empty. Thanks so much for watching this episode of The Roadmap. Thanks so much for coming on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching The Roadmap with Ted Jenkins.